I heard Mom say, use her money for renovations, then kick her out. I smiled and planned the ultimate revenge. On Christmas Eve, I projected their texts on the TV, then opened the door for a surprise guest. Mom screamed in horror. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. I don't want to spend Christmas with that loser. Those words hit me harder than the icy December wind that was currently whipping around the corner of the house. I froze instantly. My hands were gripping the aluminum frame of the ladder so tightly that I lost feeling in my fingertips. I was suspended 12 feet in the air, balancing precariously while trying to string the last of the expensive, commercial-grade icicle lights along the back porch of my parents' sprawling Victorian home. I had cracked the garden window open just an inch or two earlier. I was sweating under my heavy down coat despite the freezing temperatures, and I needed the airflow. Now, that small gap in the window was serving as a portal to a nightmare I never expected to walk into. I clearly heard the voice of my sister, Courtney. It drifted up from the patio directly below me, sharp, nasal, and unmistakable. She sounded annoyed, the way a teenager sounds when asked to take out the trash, except Courtney was 30 years old. Mom should make her pay for the rest of the renovation and then cut her off, Courtney said, her voice dripping with that familiar mix of entitlement and disdain. Why are we even waiting? It's painful to watch her try so hard. My stomach dropped, a physical sensation of nausea that nearly made me lose my footing. I held my breath, afraid that even the sound of my exhale, turning to white mist in the cold air, would give me away. It's embarrassing to call her family, Courtney continued, and I could hear the clinking of ice in a glass. She shows up in those heavy work boots, smelling like sawdust and cheap coffee. It's humiliating. When Bradley and I have friends over, I have to explain that she's eccentric. I don't want her ruining the aesthetic of the party tonight. Then I heard my mother, Deborah. Her voice was smoother, calmer, cultivated from years of social climbing and country club lunches. But it carried a cruelty that cut deeper than my sister's whining because it was so calculated. We are already working on it, sweetheart, my mother said. I imagined her swirling her Chardonnay, her other hand resting on the railing I had sanded and stained myself just last week. Just be patient. Let her finish the master bath and the landscaping. The contractor said the marble installation is scheduled for Tuesday. Once the final checks clear and the work is signed off, we'll handle the rest. Handle the rest? What did that mean? My mind raced, trying to find a benign explanation, but deep down, I knew there wasn't one. All our inheritance will go to you, Deborah said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that carried perfectly in the crisp air. We've already drafted the paperwork with Bradley. She won't get a dime. She has her little business. She can support herself. You need the help more. You have a lifestyle to maintain. My heart was pounding so hard against my ribs I thought it might crack them. I had just finished putting up $300 worth of lights. I had spent the last 6 months pouring my sweat, my time, and my entire savings account into this house. I did it because Mom said the house was our legacy. I did it because Dad looked so tired and the roof was leaking. They laughed then. It was a sound I knew well, the sound of two people sharing a dirty secret, a bond forged in mutual superiority. I'm pretending to be a little contractor, Courtney mocked, pitching her voice low to imitate me. Look at me, I can lift heavy things. She'll never find a husband acting like that. She'll just die alone and lonely with her hammer and nails. Mom chimed in, and this broke me. She doesn't need a husband, Courtney. She has us to take care of her money for her. She's useful. Let's not break the tool until the job is done. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Suddenly, everything made sense. The way Mom would hide her phone screen when I entered the room. The way she would whisper on the phone late at night and exchange glances with Courtney that twisted my stomach. The way Bradley, my brother-in-law, always asked probing questions about my business revenue but never about my life. After being a dutiful daughter for 34 years, you develop a sixth sense for these things, but I had chosen to ignore it. I had chosen to believe that if I just worked hard enough, if I just paid for enough things, they would finally love me. I thought my value to them was me, but it was just my bank account. Thinking about it, I had dedicated my entire adult life to my family. Simply because I was single and financially free. I funded the family trips to Europe so Mom could post photos on Facebook. I paid for Mom's luxury handbags because Dad doesn't understand fashion. I paid for the renovation costs for the house because they said they were cash poor but asset rich. Everything suddenly looked warped and ugly under the twinkling lights I had lovingly hung. Today, too, I spent the morning hanging decorations, arranging the wreath, and preparing a feast. Everything had to be perfect for me to earn my family's approval. I had marinated the prime rib for 3 days. I baked cookies from scratch. But the small hope that maybe, just maybe, they would accept me this year was shattered instantly. Something then hardened inside me like concrete. That moment, standing on a ladder in the freezing cold, the old Meredith died. The Meredith who sought approval, who apologized for taking up space, who thought love was something you could buy with servitude, she fell off that ladder and vanished. I decided to reclaim the time, assets, and self that my family had taken from me. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. Not yet. Crying was for victims. I was about to become the villain in their story, and I was going to enjoy it. I quietly slid the window shut, inch by inch, praying the old track wouldn't squeak. It didn't. I stepped down from the ladder, my boots crunching softly on the frozen grass. I walked to the far side of the yard, behind the oak tree, and fell to my knees. I took 3 deep breaths, filling my lungs with the biting winter air until my chest burned. I checked my reflection in the glass of the back door. My face was pale, but my eyes were dry. They looked different. Darker. I smoothed my hair, adjusted my sweater to hide the trembling in my hands, and fixed the most convincing smile of my life on my face. They wanted a loser? No. They were about to meet the woman who ran a successful construction company with 5 crews. They were about to meet Meredith, the CEO. And the CEO was about to conduct a hostile takeover. I opened the back door and walked into the warmth of the kitchen. Before I go on, I just want to say thank you for listening to my story. It means the world to me that I can share this with you. Please, drop a comment and let me know which city you are listening from. It helps me feel less alone in all this. Now, let me tell you what happened when I walked into that kitchen. The warmth of the kitchen hit me instantly, smelling of rosemary, roasted garlic, and the expensive vanilla candles I had bought for Mom last week. Usually, this scent brought me comfort, a sense of home and holiday cheer. Today, it smelled like betrayal. It smelled like a trap. Mom was standing by the oversized island, the one I had designed and paid for, arranging appetizers on a silver platter. She was wearing a red silk blouse that I knew cost more than my weekly food budget. Courtney was lounging on a bar stool, scrolling through her phone, looking bored and impeccably made up. "Oh, there you are," Mom said, looking up with a bright, fake smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Did you finish the lights? The neighbors have had theirs up for days. We don't want to look like the Grimm house on the block. The Thompsons across the street already asked if we were having financial trouble." "All done," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. It felt like I was controlling a puppet, pulling the strings of my own jaw. "It looks magical. Just the way you wanted it." "Good," Courtney muttered without looking up from her screen. She tapped a long, manicured fingernail against the glass. "Make sure you swept the porch. I don't want dirt tracked on my heels when Bradley gets here. These are Louboutins, Meredith. Not that you'd know what those are." I felt a flash of anger, hot and sharp, but I pushed it down deep. I walked over to the oven and checked the prime rib. It was sizzling perfectly. Of course it was. I had spent hours ensuring it would be. The week before this Christmas gathering, something had felt off about my mother. Not her usual irritation when I brought sawdust onto her pristine floors. This was different. She had been particularly tense lately, criticizing my every move, but I had brushed it off as holiday stress. Now I knew better. It wasn't stress. It was anticipation. She was anticipating the moment she could kick me out. She was giddy with the prospect of theft. Everyone was home that day for the Christmas party. My father, Gregory, came in from his study. He looked older this year, his shoulders stooped. "Meredith, this is truly spectacular work," Dad said, his eyes scanning the new crown molding I had installed in the living room. "The way the light hits the wood. You have a real gift, honey." "Thank you, Dad," I said, feeling a pang of genuine sadness. He was the only one who seemed to see me, but even he was blind to what was happening right under his nose. Or maybe he chose not to see it. Was he a victim, or was he an accomplice through negligence? I wasn't sure yet. Then Bradley, my brother-in-law, walked in. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my first truck, holding a glass of expensive scotch that I had bought. He walked with the arrogance of a mediocre man who had never been told no. "It's nice, sure," Bradley said, looking around with a critical eye. "But are you sure these load-bearing beams are up to code? You know, with these small-time construction outfits, corners get cut. I'd hate for the roof to collapse on us during dinner. I mean, do you even have proper liability insurance, Meredith? Or is this a cash-under-the-table operation?" "I built this company from the ground up, Bradley," I said, keeping my tone light but staring him directly in the eyes. "We passed inspection with flying colors. Unlike some law firms I know that are currently under audit for billing irregularities." The room went silent for a beat. The air crackled. Bradley's eyes narrowed, his smile faltering for a split second. I saw Courtney stiffen on her stool. "I was just joking, Meredith," Bradley said, his smile returning, but it was tight now. "You're always so sensitive. Can't take a little ribbing?" We moved to the dining table. The setting was exquisite, fine china, crystal glasses, fresh holly centerpieces. All arranged by me. I filled wine glasses with a vintage Cabernet. Mom took a sip and wrinkled her nose. "Is this the 2015? I specifically asked for the 2012, Meredith. This one is a bit tannic." "It's the 2012, Mom," I said calmly. "I decanted it an hour ago." "Well, maybe it hasn't breathed enough," she dismissed, turning away from me to face Courtney. "So, darling, tell us about the ski trip you're planning." "Aspen, isn't it?" I watched them. I really watched them. I saw the way Mom reached out and squeezed Courtney's hand. I saw the way Bradley smirked at Courtney when I served him the potatoes. I saw my father eating quietly, his eyes focused on his plate, trying to make himself small. "So, Meredith," Mom said, pivoting back to me with a look of calculation. "When do you think the master bathroom will be finished?" I was hoping to have it done before New Year's. I want to host a brunch for the garden club, and I can't have dust everywhere. I looked at her. I saw the greed behind her eyes. She didn't care about the garden club. She cared about the timeline. The timeline for my eviction. "I'm waiting on the Italian marble," I lied smoothly. "It's stuck in customs. Probably another 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Mom sighed, a dramatic, suffering sound. "Well, I suppose we can wait. But do hurry. We want everything perfect for the new year." For the new year. For her new life. Without me. After dinner, Mom began cleaning and softly humming Christmas carols as if she hadn't just shattered my world. I insisted she relax and finish the cleanup myself. She tapped my cheek gently, her fingers cold and dry. "What a good daughter you are, Meredith. Always so helpful. We don't say it enough, but we appreciate the free labor." She laughed as if it were a joke. That hypocrisy burned in my throat like acid. I wanted to slap her hand away. I wanted to scream that I knew everything. I wanted to overturn the table and shatter the crystal. But I didn't. I washed the dishes, dried the crystal, and put everything away. Because to catch a predator, you have to be patient. You have to let them think they've won. You have to let them get comfortable in their cruelty. And tonight, I was just getting started. I wasn't just going to fix the house. I was going to demolish the family. As I stood at the sink, scrubbing the roasting pan until my knuckles were raw, the hot water did nothing to melt the ice in my chest. My mind drifted back. Way back. This dynamic wasn't new. It wasn't a sudden shift. It was the foundation of our entire family structure. I had just been too desperate for love to admit it. Growing up, there was always a stark, painful difference between Courtney and me. It was woven into the fabric of our daily lives. Courtney was the golden child. She was born with Mom's delicate features, her blue eyes, her petite frame. She was the doll Mom could dress up and show off. I, on the other hand, took after my father's side, specifically his mother, Grandma Edith. I was taller, broader, with unruly hair and a stubborn jaw. Mom hated her mother-in-law with a passion that bordered on obsession, and I think every time she looked at me, she saw the woman who had criticized her cooking and her spending habits. When we were kids, the favoritism was blatant. Courtney got ballet lessons, tap shoes, and expensive pageant dresses. I got library cards and hand-me-down bikes. I remembered my 16th birthday vividly. I had asked for a car, nothing fancy, just something to get me to my part-time job. Mom and Dad handed me a bus schedule and a lecture about building character. 3 years later, on Courtney's 16th birthday, I watched from the driveway as they surprised her with a brand new red convertible with a giant white bow on the hood. Mom was crying tears of joy. Dad was beaming. I stood there, holding the keys to my beat-up truck that I had bought with my own wages from working at the hardware store, and felt a piece of my heart turn to stone. When I confronted Mom about it later, she just shrugged. "Courtney is different, Meredith. She's fragile. She needs safety. You're a survivor. You can handle the bus." So I survived. I leaned into the identity they gave me. I started working at the local hardware store. I learned about tools, about lumber, about plumbing. I fell in love with the logic of construction. If you built a strong foundation, the house stood. It was simple. It was honest. If you made a mistake, you could measure it, cut it out, and fix it. Unlike my family, where mistakes were buried under layers of passive aggression. After college, while Courtney was finding herself on a lavish trip to Europe that Mom and Dad paid for, I built my construction company. I started with only tools and determination, sleeping in my truck some nights to save on rent. Now I manage 5 crews. It's not flashy, but it pays well. Very well. I have a robust portfolio, solid investments, and a reputation for excellence. But to Mom, it was dirty work. She would tell her friends I was in real estate development or interior design, anything to avoid admitting her daughter wore a hard hat and steel-toed boots. She was ashamed of the very hands that were currently paying for her lifestyle. My dad, Ryan, an economics professor, never failed to offer condescending advice about my business. He meant well, I think, but he lived in textbooks. He didn't understand the grit of the real world. "You should scale back," he'd say. "It's too much stress for a woman. Why don't you teach?" Courtney, with her lawyer husband Bradley, seemed to think she earned his status by association. They always believed I should do better. Their constant sarcasm about my cute little company and endless questions about when I'd find a real career never stopped. I remember one Christmas, 5 years ago. I had just landed my first $1 million contract. I was so proud. I bought everyone lavish gifts. I sent mom and dad to Hawaii, first class. I spent $10,000 on that trip. When they came back, all mom talked about was how the hotel service was slightly slow and the sand was too hot. She didn't say thank you. Not once. She complained that the flight attendant wasn't attentive enough. Courtney, that same year, had given them a framed photo of herself. Just a photo. Mom cried. She put it on the mantelpiece, right in the center, pushing my card to the back. That was the moment I should have known. I should have realized that love in this house was a currency I couldn't earn, no matter how much I paid. But I was stubborn. I was stupid. I thought if I just fixed the house, this old, crumbling Victorian that mom constantly complained about, she would finally be happy. She would finally look at me with the same adoration she gave Courtney. So I volunteered. I offered to renovate the entire ground floor and the master suite. I told them I would cover the materials and the labor. It was supposed to be my ultimate gift. My ticket into their hearts. I poured myself into this project. I worked weekends. I personally sanded the floors because I didn't trust anyone else to get the grain right. I installed the custom cabinetry. I breathed in dust and fumes for 6 months. And for what? To be called a loser. To be plotted against like an enemy. To be treated like a squatter in the home I was rebuilding. The water in the sink had turned cold and greasy. I pulled the plug and watched the dirty water swirl down the drain. It felt symbolic. All my effort, all my money, all my love, just going down the drain, leaving nothing but scum behind. But not anymore. The sadness I felt earlier was shifting. It was cooling into something harder, sharper. It was turning into strategy. I dried my hands on the towel. The house was quiet now. Mom and Dad had gone up to bed. Courtney and Bradley were giggling in the guest room. I walked into the living room, the lights of the Christmas tree casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. I looked at the stockings hung by the fire. My stocking was there, hanging on the far end, looking slightly emptier than the rest. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I was the architect of my own life. And if I had to tear this house down to the studs to save myself, I would. Tonight, the renovation of my life would truly begin. And the first step was gathering intel. I needed proof. I needed ammunition. I couldn't sleep. The adrenaline was still coursing through my veins, making my skin prickle like I had touched fiberglass insulation. I sat in the darkened living room, looking around at the work I had done. In the moonlight, the details stood out, each one a receipt of my stupidity. The renovation wasn't just a coat of paint. It was structural. It was massive. When Mom first complained about the drafty windows and the outdated kitchen 6 months ago, I saw an opportunity. I drew up the blueprints myself. I sourced the reclaimed oak for the flooring from a barn in Pennsylvania because Mom said she wanted rustic chic. That would alone cost me $8,000. I remembered driving the flatbed truck myself to pick it up to save on delivery fees, driving through a rainstorm, terrified the wood would warp. Then there was the kitchen. She wanted a chef's kitchen, despite the fact that she rarely cooked anything more complicated than pasta. She insisted on a Viking range, a sub-zero fridge, and custom quartz countertops that had to be imported. I remembered the day the countertops arrived. I was there, supervising the crew, making sure they didn't chip the edges. Mom walked in, holding a glass of iced tea, looking fresh and rested while I was covered in grout dust. She ran her hand over the stone and frowned. "Is this the right shade of white, Meredith? It looks a bit gray in this light." "It's the exact slab you picked out at the quarry, Mom," I had said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "It's Carrara marble. It has gray veining." "That's the point." Well, I hope it brightens up when you paint the walls, she had sniffed, walking away without offering me a drink of water or even a good job. I looked at the receipts in my mind, tallying the damage. The plumbing overhaul for the master bath was another 10 grand. Courtney had insisted on a jacuzzi tub with hydrojets, claiming that Mom needs it for her back. I knew for a fact Courtney was the one who loved long baths, not Mom. Mom preferred quick showers. But I paid for it anyway, because Courtney whispered that if I did this, Mom would finally stop criticizing me. Grand total, I had spent close to $57,450. That number burned in my brain. $57,450. That was my savings. That was the money I had set aside for my own down payment on a house one day. But I had put it here, investing in the family legacy, believing that one day, this house would be a gathering place for all of us. And then there was Dad. Throughout the renovation, Dad had been pushed further and further into the background. Mom had insisted that his old study, a cozy, book-filled room that smelled of pipe tobacco and old paper, be converted into a sunroom for her morning yoga. She claimed she needed the Zen energy. Dad had been relegated to a small, cramped spare bedroom in the basement. It was damp down there, and the light was terrible. I remembered helping him move his books. He looked so defeated, clutching his first edition of Adam Smith like a lifeline. "It's all right, Meredith," he had said softly, his voice lacking its usual professorial authority. "Your mother needs the light. The basement is quiet. Good for reading. I won't be in the way down here." I felt a surge of guilt that nearly choked me. I had been the one swinging the hammer. I had been the one tearing down his sanctuary to build her palace. I was an accomplice to his isolation. I realized now that Mom and Courtney weren't just using me, they were erasing him too. They were reshaping the house to fit a life that didn't include us. A life of yoga rooms and hydro tubs and champagne, funded by the two people they respected the least. I stood up and walked over to the new French doors I had installed. The glass was cold. I had noticed signs, of course. Red flags I had willfully ignored because I didn't want to see them. Like the time Mom asked me to pay the contractor in cash because it's faster, but she refused to give me a receipt for the cash she supposedly handed him. I had to track him down myself to verify payment, and he looked confused, saying Mom had only given him half of what I gave her. When I asked her, she claimed she used the rest for unexpected permits, but she never showed me the permit. Or the way Bradley would ask probing questions about my business structure. "So, is your company an LLC or a sole proprietorship? How are your assets protected in case of a lawsuit? Do you have a will, Meredith? You really should, given how dangerous your job is." I thought he was just being a lawyer, making conversation. Now I realized he was sizing up my vulnerability. He was looking for cracks in my armor. He was probably drafting the very legal documents to steal this house while sipping the scotch I bought him. And Mom, she had been so secretive lately. Always guarding her purse. Changing the subject whenever I asked about the family trust fund, which I contributed to monthly. "Don't worry your pretty little head about finance," she would say, patting my hand condescendingly. "That's why we have men, isn't it? You just focus on your wood." The irony was sickening. I was the main breadwinner of this family's extras. Dad's professor's salary covered the basics, but the lifestyle? The clothes, the cars, the renovations? That was me. And yet, she acted like I was a child playing with Monopoly money. I looked at the ceiling, at the flawless drywall I had hung. I had built a beautiful stage for their treachery. But if I knew how to build, I also knew how to demolish. And before I took a wrecking ball to this house, I needed to see exactly what was rotting underneath the foundation. It was 2 a.m. The house was silent. It was time to stop being the builder and start being the investigator. I needed to see the blueprints of their betrayal. I moved through the house like a ghost. I knew every squeaky floorboard. I was the one who had meant to fix them, after all, so I avoided them with ease. My socks slid silently on the polished hardwood. The shadows seemed to stretch and grab at my ankles, but I pushed forward. My destination was the master bedroom. Or rather, the small alcove off the master bedroom where Mom kept her antique writing desk. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that threatened to deafen me. This was wrong. It was an invasion of privacy. It was illegal. It was everything I wasn't. But then the echo of Courtney's voice, that loser, played in my head on a loop, and my resolve hardened into something diamond-sharp. I cracked the bedroom door open. The hinges were well-oiled, my doing, so it opened silently. The room was dark, illuminated only by the faint, eerie glow of the streetlights filtering through the sheer curtains. I could hear the rhythmic breathing of my mother in the bed, deep and untroubled, and the softer, more erratic snore of my father. I crept to the desk. Her laptop sat there, a sleek silver machine that I had bought her for her birthday last year because she complained her old one was too heavy. I opened it slowly, praying the startup chime was muted. It was. Thank God. The screen lit up, casting a spectral blue glow on my face. Password required. I paused. Password protection was unusual for her. She usually complained she couldn't remember them. But looking at the prompt, I realized she had learned. I tried her birthday. Incorrect. I tried password 123. Incorrect. I tried Meredith. Incorrect. Stupid of me to even think that. I closed my eyes and thought. Who did she love most in the world? Who is the center of her universe? I typed in, Courtney 1994. The screen unlocked. I felt a bitter laugh bubble up in my throat, almost choking me. Of course. Her golden child was the key to everything. Even her digital security was dedicated to her favorite daughter. I didn't have much time. My hands were shaking, making it hard to navigate the trackpad. I went straight to her email. Most of it was junk mail, receipts from online shopping sites I couldn't afford, newsletters from the country club. But then I saw it. A folder labeled Project R. Project R? Renovation? Ryan? I clicked it. The first email was from Bradley. It was dated 6 months ago. Subject, Asset Transfer Strategy. Martha, Mom's name was Deborah, but her middle name was Martha, and she used it for legal documents. I've looked into the deed. Since the house is in both your and Gregory's names, it's tricky. However, regarding the renovation costs Meredith is covering. The law has a gray area here. If there is no written contract stating it's a loan, the court will likely view her contribution as a gift to the property. Once the work is done and the value of the home increases, she has no legal claim to that equity. We can proceed with the transfer to Courtney immediately after the final inspection. I've attached the draft documents. I felt sick. Physically, violently sick. They had planned this before I even bought the first box of nails. Bradley, the upstanding lawyer, was advising my mother on how to legally steal from her own daughter. They treated me like a mark in a con game. I kept scrolling. There were dozens of emails. Spreadsheets detailing my assets, the estimated value of my company, and even a timeline for removing me from the family will. But then I found something else. Something that didn't fit the greedy family narrative. There were emails from someone saved simply as V. I opened one. My darling D, I can't wait much longer. The winters here are cold without you. Once the house is settled and the funds are secured, we can finally be together. R doesn't suspect a thing, does he? Love, V. R. Ryan. My dad. My stomach churned. This wasn't just about money. This was an affair. Mom wasn't just screwing me over, she was screwing Dad over. I clicked on the sender's details. The email address was cryptic, men1960@gmail.com, but there was a small Google profile photo attached to the account. I clicked to enlarge it. It was a man. Older, distinguished, with silver hair and a tan that spoke of expensive golf courses. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him immediately in the dark. I scrolled back through the messages. They spanned years. Years of deceit. July 12th, I need another $5,000 for the investment. Can you transfer it? Mom's reply, I'll take it from the travel fund. Meredith just made a deposit. She won't notice. I gasped, clamping my hand over my mouth to stifle the sound. She wasn't just stealing my inheritance. She was stealing my cash. The money I gave her for the family trips, for household expenses, she was funneling it to this man. I quickly pulled a USB drive from my pocket, I always carried one for work, and began copying everything. The emails with Bradley. The love letters with V. The spreadsheets. The progress bar crawled across the screen. 20%. 50%. Suddenly, Mom shifted in the bed. Her breathing pattern changed. She let out a small groan and rolled over, facing the desk. I froze. The blue light from the screen felt like a spotlight exposing me. I crouched down, making myself as small as possible. 80%. Gregory? Mom mumbled in her sleep. Did you lock the door? I held my breath, my heart pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it. I willed myself to be invisible. 90%. Dad snorted and mumbled something unintelligible, rolling away. Mom sighed, punched her pillow aggressively, and lay back down. 100%. Copy complete. I yanked the drive out, snapped the laptop shut, and waited. 5 agonizing minutes passed. I counted every second. When her breathing finally evened out into a deep rhythm again, I slipped out of the room, clutching the USB drive like a grenade. I had the ammunition. Now I needed to know exactly who V was. And I had a sinking feeling that when I found out, it was going to destroy more than just this Christmas. Back in the safety of the guest room, because my old bedroom, the one I grew up in, had been turned into a storage space for Courtney's winter clothes and old pageant trophies, I plugged the USB drive into my own laptop. My hands were shaking so bad it took me 3 tries to get it into the port. I needed to dig deeper. I had the emails, I had the evidence of the theft, but I felt like I was missing the emotional core of this betrayal. Why? Why did she hate me so much? Greed I could understand. People do terrible things for money. But the vitriol? The way she called me a loser? The pleasure she took in mocking me? That was personal. That was hate. Among the files I had copied was a folder called Personal. It contained a series of Word documents, labeled by year. It looked like a digital journal. I hesitated. Reading her emails was one thing, reading her diary felt like peering into the abyss. It felt like crossing a line from which I could never return. But then I remembered her laugh on the patio. I clicked the file dated the year I was born. October 14th, 1989. I'm trapped. I can't believe this is happening. Just when I was about to leave Gregory. Curtis and I had it all planned. We were going to run away to Italy. He had the tickets. We were going to leave everything behind. And now this. I'm pregnant. It has to be Gregory's. The timing works. But God, I don't want it. I don't want another child. Especially not now. This baby is a chain. A shackle binding me to a mediocre life with a boring professor. Curtis said he can't be with a woman who is carrying another man's child. He left. He left me because of this thing inside me. I stopped reading, tears blurring my vision. Curtis. The name hit me like a physical blow. Curtis Vance. My father's best friend. His college roommate. The man who had been the best man at their wedding. The man who came to our barbecues when I was a kid, always bringing expensive wine and looking at my mother with eyes that lingered too long. I wiped my eyes and scrolled down, my stomach twisting. March 1990. She's here. Meredith. She screams constantly. She looks just like Gregory's mother. The same thick nose, the same stubborn chin. I look at her and I see my prison warden. I see the reason I couldn't be with Curtis. Every time she cries, I want to scream. I look at her and I see my lost future. For years later, Courtney is born. Finally, a piece of me. She is beautiful. She is perfect. She is everything Meredith isn't. She looks like me. I will make sure Courtney has the life I never got. I will give her everything. Meredith is the past, but Courtney is the future. I sat back, the air leaving my lungs in a rush. It wasn't my fault. For 34 years, I had thought I was defective. I thought I was too loud, too clumsy, too tomboyish. I thought if I just dressed better, earned more money, fixed the house, she would love me. I thought if I became successful, she would be proud. But she never hated me for who I was. She hated me for when I was. I was the accident that kept her from her lover. I was the living embodiment of her regret. Every time she looked at me, she didn't see a daughter, she saw the plane ticket to Italy she never got to use. And Courtney was her do-over. Her second chance at a glamorous life. A strange sense of calm washed over me. It was a cold, desolate kind of calm, but it was liberating. I didn't need to try anymore. There was nothing to fix. You can't renovate a foundation that was never poured. You can't repair a love that never existed. I closed the document. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but the confusion was gone. And in its place, a righteous fury began to burn. She had blamed me for ruining her life? Fine. I would show her what a ruined life actually looked like. She wanted to rewrite history? I was about to expose it. I opened a new browser window and searched for Curtis Vance. There he was. V. The man from the email photo. He was a real estate developer now, living in a ritzy condo downtown. The website showed him smiling next to a woman, his wife, Linda. Wait. He was married? I quickly cross-referenced the dates. The emails between him and Mom were recent. Can't wait to be together. Winters are cold. Need money for the investment. So, Curtis was playing Mom too. He was married, likely living off his wife's money. Linda Vance was a known heiress in our town. I recognized the name from charity galas, while extracting cash from my mother. My mother was stealing from me to give to a man who was lying to her. She was robbing her own daughter to fund a fantasy with a con artist. It was a pyramid scheme of betrayal. And I was at the bottom, holding the bag. I looked at the clock. 4 a.m. The house was dead silent, but my mind was screaming. I had the motive. I had the plan. But I needed to secure the assets. I needed to see exactly how much money was gone. If she was sending money to Curtis, how deep did the hole go? I opened the banking app. I had access to the joint account I shared with Mom for household expenses. I took a deep breath and clicked on transaction history. The screen populated with numbers, a long, digital list of debits and credits. At first glance, it looked normal. Grocery bills, utility payments, the occasional charge for the landscaper, the dry cleaner. But I knew what I was looking for now. I was looking for the bleed. I was looking for the holes in the boat. I filtered the search for transfers over $1,000. There it was. November 15th, withdrawal $2,500. Description, CV consulting. October 2nd, withdrawal $3,000. Description, CV consulting. September 10th, withdrawal $5,000. Description, CV consulting. CV Curtis Vance. I scrolled back. The consulting fees started 3 years ago. Small at first, a few hundred here and there, then escalating as their relationship presumably rekindled. Then I checked the vacation fund sub-account. This was a savings pot I had set up 5 years ago. I deposited $500 every month, auto-drafted from my business account. It was intended for a big family trip to Italy for Mom and Dad's 40th anniversary next summer. It was supposed to be a surprise. It should have had nearly $30,000 in it by now. I clicked on the balance. Balance, $42.50. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the mouse. Gone. It was all gone. I clicked on the withdrawal history. A lump sum transfer of $20,000 had been made 2 weeks ago. Destination, Vance Holdings LLC. She had drained the Italy fund. The irony was so sharp it could cut glass. She wanted to run away to Italy with Curtis, using the money I had saved to send her and Dad there. She took the gift meant to celebrate her marriage to Dad and used it to finance her escape from him. This wasn't just familial cruelty anymore. This was theft. Embezzlement. This was a crime. I started taking screenshots. Every transfer. Every date. Every fraudulent description. I needed paper trails. I also noticed something else. Something terrifying. The mortgage payments on the house. Dad thought the house was nearly paid off. He had mentioned it a few months ago, sitting in his old chair, saying how relieved he was to be debt-free soon so he could retire. But I saw recent withdrawals for refinancing fees. I logged into the mortgage portal, thank God Mom used the same password for everything, arrogance making her sloppy. The principal balance wasn't zero. It was $200,000. She had refinanced the house. She had taken equity out. Recently. Where did that money go? I followed the paper trail. It went into a separate account under Mom's name only, and then, straight out to Vance Holdings LLC. She was liquidating the family estate. She was stripping the carcass of our life clean before she jumped ship. She was cashing out. Dad. Oh God, Dad. He would be left with nothing. No house, no savings, just a mountain of debt and a broken heart. He would be 64 years old, homeless, and bankrupt. The realization hit me, I wasn't just fighting for my renovation money. I wasn't just fighting for my dignity. I was fighting for my father's survival. If I didn't stop this, Gregory would be destitute. I printed everything. The hum of the portable printer I traveled with sounded like a tank rolling into battle in the quiet room. Whir. Click. Whir. Click. I had a stack of papers an inch thick. This was forensic evidence of a financial crime. But I knew the law was tricky. Since it was a joint account, she technically had the right to withdraw funds. Since the house was in her name too, she could refinance if Dad signed. Wait. Did Dad sign? I pulled up the refinance documents. There was his signature. Gregory Miller. But it looked shaky. Wobbly. I remembered a few weeks ago, Dad mentioning that Mom had him sign some insurance updates while he was watching TV without his glasses. She tricked him. She forged his consent, or at least obtained it under false pretenses. It was immoral, but was it illegal enough to stop her instantly? And more importantly, if I exposed this now, would she just run? Would she take what was left and disappear with Curtis before we could freeze the assets? I needed legal advice. Real advice. Not from a family friend, but from a shark. I looked at the time. 6 a.m. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky a bruised purple, illuminating the snow in the yard. I packed my laptop. I packed the papers. I packed the USB drive. I heard footsteps upstairs. The house was waking up. The floorboards creaked. I quickly shut everything down and threw a blanket over my work. Meredith? It was Courtney's voice, groggy and annoying. Are you making coffee? I need caffeine. The heater in the guest room is making a noise. I took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of self-control I possessed. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her she was broke. Coming right up, I called out, my voice cheerful. I'm just starting the grinder. I walked into the kitchen, the evidence of their crimes sitting in my bag just 10 feet away. I ground the beans. I brewed the coffee. I poured a mug and handed it to my sister as she shuffled in, wrapped in a silk robe. Thanks, she grunted, not making eye contact, grabbing the mug. You know, you should really do something about your hair. It's a mess. You look like you haven't slept. I smiled. A genuine, terrifying smile that she was too self-absorbed to notice. I'm planning a big change, Courtney, I said. A really big change. You won't even recognize me. She rolled her eyes and took a sip. Whatever. Just make sure the bacon isn't burnt this time. She had no idea that the messy sister she despised was currently holding the detonator to her entire world. And my finger was hovering right over the button. Later that morning, I made an excuse about a client emergency, a burst pipe at a job site. I lied, and drove into the city. I didn't go to a job site. I drove my truck straight to the glass and steel tower of Holloway and Associates. I had an appointment with Alan Holloway, the toughest litigator in the state. I had worked with him once on a complex contract dispute for my company, and he had terrified the opposing counsel into settling within an hour just by walking into the room. He was expensive, aggressive, and exactly what I needed. I sat in his plush leather chair, laying out the documents. The emails. The bank statements. The renovation receipts. The diary entries. Alan read through them in silence. His face was unreadable, a mask of professional stoicism. After 20 minutes, he took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. It's ugly, Meredith, he said, his voice low. Truly ugly. So, we can nail them? I asked, leaning forward, my hands gripping the armrests. We can stop the transfer? We can get my money back? Alan sighed and leaned back. It's not that simple. He pointed to the renovation receipts. The house is in your parents' names. You voluntarily paid for improvements. Without a promissory note or a lien filed before the work began, the law considers this unjust enrichment at best, but more likely a gift. You improved their asset. That was your choice. Proving you expected repayment is hard without a written contract. I felt my stomach drop. But the email. Bradley admitted they were tricking me. He laid out the plan to defraud me. That email proves intent to deceive, yes, Alan said. It helps. But it's not a slam dunk for getting the cash back immediately. We could sue for fraud, but that takes years. Civil litigation is slow. And regarding the bank accounts, your mother is a joint owner. She can legally withdraw that money. Is it crappy? Yes. Is it theft in the eyes of the penal code? It's a gray area. And the refinancing? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. She tricked Dad. If your father's signature is on that refinance document and he signed it without reading it, well, the bank considers that valid, Alan said gently. Unless he is willing to testify that he was coerced or mentally incapacitated, the mortgage stands. He trusts her, I whispered. He signs whatever she puts in front of him. He won't believe me if I just tell him. Alan leaned back, tenting his fingers. Here's the reality, Meredith. If we file a lawsuit today, we alert them. They will circle the wagons. They'll hide the rest of the money. Bradley is a lawyer, he knows the system. He'll tie you up in motions until your savings run dry. They'll burn the cash before you ever see a dime. So I just let them win? I asked, my voice rising, tears of frustration stinging my eyes. I let them steal $60,000 from me and hundreds of thousands from my dad? I let them kick me out on Christmas. No, Alan said. A slow, shark-like smile spread across his face. It was the smile of a predator sensing blood. We don't sue them. Not yet. We destroy them. He tapped the stack of papers. You have leverage here. Social leverage. Professional leverage. Bradley is advising your mother to commit fraud against her daughter. That's a massive ethics violation. The Bar Association would be very interested in that. He could lose his license. And the affair? I asked. That's your nuclear option, Alan said. But you need to be careful. If you blow this up too early, they run. You need to catch them in a way that leaves them no room to maneuver. You need a confession. Or better yet, a confrontation where they can't deny it. Where witnesses are present. I have a recording device, I said. I can bug the house. Alan held up a hand. I didn't hear that. Connecticut is a two-party consent state for recording. You can't use that in court. It's inadmissible. He leaned in closer. But you can use it to know their next move. Use the information to set a trap. Make them expose themselves publicly. Once the reputation is gone, once the shame hits, they'll crumble. Then we file the suit. We hit them when they are down. I nodded slowly. The law was a shield, but I needed a sword. One more thing, Alan said, pointing to the picture of Curtis Vance. This guy. If he's scamming your mother, his wife probably doesn't know. The wife controls the money in these situations, usually. Linda Vance, I said. She's an heiress. Her family founded the hospital. Find her, Alan said. If you turn the money tap off at the source, the rats will start eating each other. If Curtis gets cut off, he'll turn on your mother. And your mother will panic. I gathered my papers. I felt lighter, focused. The legal wall was high, but I didn't need to climb over it. I was going to tunnel underneath and blow up the foundation. Thanks, Alan, I said, standing up. Happy hunting, Meredith, he replied. And remember, don't let them see you coming. I walked out of the office and into the cold December air. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. Make sure you pick up the wine for Courtney's birthday dinner tonight. And don't get the cheap stuff like last night. We have guests. I stared at the screen. Courtney's birthday. It was perfect. A party. All the players in one room. A captive audience. I typed back, of course, Mom. Only the best for family. I got in my truck. I had a stop to make before I went home. I needed to visit a specialized electronics store for those inadmissible listening devices. And then I had a date with Linda Vance. I was going to give Courtney a birthday present she would never forget. After leaving Alan's office, I didn't go straight home. I drove to a nondescript strip mall on the edge of town, sandwiched between a vape shop and a dry cleaner. The sign simply said Security Solutions, but everyone in the trade knew it as the spy shop. The bell chimed as I walked in. The air smelled of ozone and static. A guy behind the counter, who looked like he had spent too much time in dark rooms, looked up. "Help you?" he grunted. "I need to listen," I said, leaning on the glass counter. Inside a residential house. Clear audio. Long battery life. And I need it to be invisible. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded and pulled out a small black box. Voice-activated recorders. Magnetic backing. Size of a quarter. They'll record for 40 hours straight. You retrieve them, plug them into USB. "Give me 5, I said. I paid cash, $200, and drove home with the devices burning a hole in my pocket. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked peaceful. The Christmas wreath I had hung on the door looked festive. But I knew it was a facade. It was a beautiful wrapper on a rotten gift. I entered the house. "Hello?" I called out. Silence. Dad was likely at the university. Mom was probably out shopping, which I now knew meant meeting Curtis. Courtney didn't wake up before noon if she could help it. I got to work. I placed the first bug in the kitchen, sticking it to the underside of the island overhang, right where they usually sat to drink wine and gossip. I placed the second one in the living room, behind the heavy velvet drapes. I placed the third one in Mom's sunroom, Dad's old study, tucked inside a fake fern she kept on her yoga shelf. I hesitated at the fourth one. I went down to the basement. Dad's room. It was damp down here. It smelled of mildew and old paper. I saw his small twin bed, the kind you buy for a child, pushed against the concrete wall. His books were stacked in precarious towers because there were no shelves. I felt a surge of rage so intense my vision blurred. They had banished a tenured professor, the man who paid the mortgage for 30 years, to a dungeon. I didn't bug his room. I couldn't invade his privacy. He was a victim here, not a perpetrator. Instead, I left a small, high-end space heater I had in my truck by his bed. It was a small kindness, but it was all I could offer right now. I went back upstairs and placed the final 2 bugs in the dining room and, boldly, under the frame of the bed in the guest room where Courtney and Bradley were staying. By 4 p.m., the house was fully wired. That evening, I sat in my truck down the street, wearing headphones connected to my laptop. The reception wasn't live, I had to retrieve the files later, but I had set up a different system for immediate monitoring, a baby monitor I had gifted to Courtney years ago for her dog, claiming it would help her hear if the puppy cried. She never used it, but it was still plugged in behind the sofa. I tuned in. The audio crackled, then cleared. "So annoying," Courtney's voice. "She bought the wrong wine again." I told her I wanted the Pinot. "Relax, babe," Bradley's voice. "Just a few more days. Once she signs the lien waiver for the renovation, we're clear." "Did you draft the waiver?" "It's in my briefcase," Bradley laughed. "I titled it Project Completion Acceptance. It's full of legal jargon. Basically, it says she accepts the work is done and waives any right to claim equity or repayment. She'll sign it thinking it's just for the city permit closure." "God, you're smart," Courtney purred. "I can't wait to turn her room into a closet. I need more space for my shoes." I clenched my jaw. They were treating me like a squatter in my own life. Then, the audio shifted. I heard Mom's voice. She was on the phone in the sunroom. "Curtis, no, I can't talk long," she whispered. Her voice was breathy, excited. "Yes, I miss you too. It's unbearable here. Gregory is he's always there. Breathing. Existing. It's suffocating." I listened, my stomach churning. The money? Yes, I moved the last of it, Mom said. The refinancing went through. $200,000. It's in the LLC account. We have enough for the villa in Tuscany. We just need to get through Christmas. I'll give him the divorce papers on the 26th. Once Courtney has the house, I'm free. What about Meredith? Curtis must have asked on the other end. Mom laughed. It was a cold, harsh sound. Oh, she's useful. She fixed up the house beautifully for us to sell later if Courtney wants to. But honestly, I'll be glad to never see that sour face again. She reminds me too much of my mistakes. Mistakes. That was me. I love you, V. Just a few more days. She hung up. I took the headphones off. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. They weren't just kicking me out. They were destroying Dad. Mom was planning to serve him divorce papers the day after Christmas, leave him homeless and debt-ridden, and fly off to Italy with his best friend. It was a total annihilation of our family. I looked at the dashboard of my truck. A plan was forming. A plan darker and more comprehensive than anything I had initially thought of. I needed to secure the assets. But more importantly, I needed to blow up their alliances. Mom and Curtis. Courtney and Bradley. They were a pack of wolves, but wolves turn on each other when they're starving. I started the engine. I had the recordings. I had the proof. Now I needed the executioner. I drove toward the wealthy side of town, toward the gated community of Highland Estates. It was time to meet Mrs. Linda Vance. The Vance residence was a monstrosity of stone and glass, perched on a hill overlooking the golf course. It shouted old money from the perfectly manicured hedges to the circular driveway filled with imported cars. I pulled my battered Ford F-150 right up to the front door, parking next to a pristine Mercedes. I saw a curtain twitch in the front window. I didn't knock. I rang the doorbell and stood squarely in front of the camera, holding a manila envelope. The door opened. Linda Vance stood there. I remembered her from pictures, but she looked thinner in person, brittle almost. She was wearing cashmere and pearls, holding a glass of white wine even though it was barely 5 p.m. Her eyes were sharp, though. Intelligent. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone icy. "Deliveries go to the side entrance." "I'm not a delivery girl, Mrs. Vance," I said, holding her gaze. "My name is Meredith Miller. I'm Gregory Miller's daughter." Recognition flickered in her eyes. "Gregory? Is he okay?" Is it Curtis?" "Curtis is fine," I said. "Physically. But your bank account might not be." Her eyes narrowed. She took a step back to close the door. "I don't know what you're talking about. Please leave. I have proof that your husband is planning to leave the country on December 26th, I said quickly, jamming my foot in the doorframe. "With my mother. And he's taking $200,000 of my family's money, and likely a lot of yours, to Italy." Linda froze. She looked at my foot, then at my face. She saw the desperation and the truth in my eyes. "Come in," she whispered. She led me into a living room that looked like a museum, beautiful, cold, and empty. We sat on white sofas that looked like they had never been sat on. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I opened the envelope. "This is a log of emails between Curtis and my mother, Deborah," I said, laying the papers on the glass coffee table. "This is a record of wire transfers from my mother to Vance Holdings LLC. And this." I paused, pulling out the USB drive. "This is a recording of my mother confirming their plan to serve divorce papers and flee." Linda picked up the photos. Her hands were trembling. She stared at a picture of Curtis and my mother having a candlelit dinner, their hands clasped over the table. I knew, she said softly. Her voice broke. I knew he was seeing someone. He's done it before. But I didn't know it was Deborah. My God. Gregory's wife? They've been planning this for months, I said gently. They're calling it their new life. They think they're running away into the sunset. Linda laughed, a dry, bitter sound. With what money? Curtis is broke. I blinked. What? Curtis is broke, Linda repeated, looking up at me with eyes full of sudden, sharp anger. He made bad investments years ago. He lives off my allowance. Vance Holdings is a shell company I set up for his little tax write-offs. I control the main trust. So, I started to piece it together. He's not just scamming my mother for love. He's scamming her for survival. He's using her, Linda said, her face hardening into a mask of fury. He's finding a new host because I threatened to cut him off last month if he didn't stop gambling. He's looking for a golden parachute. My mother refinanced our house, I said. She stole my savings. She thinks she's funding their retirement. She doesn't know she's just his next meal ticket. Linda stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark golf course. When she turned back, the brittle, sad woman was gone. In her place was a CEO, a matriarch, a woman scorned. He thinks he can humiliate me, she hissed. He thinks he can take my money, run off with his best friend's wife, and leave me looking like a fool? We can stop them, I said. But I need your help. I have a plan for Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve? Linda asked. My sister's birthday party. They'll all be there. Mom, Dad, Courtney, Bradley. I want to expose them. Publicly. Irreversibly. And you want me there? I want you to be the surprise guest, I said. But more than that. I need you to cut off the money. Right now. Freeze the Vance Holdings account so he can see the money coming in from my mother, but he can't take it out. Linda smiled. It was terrifying. Oh, honey. I can do better than that. I can freeze his credit cards, his car lease, and his club membership. I can make him a pauper by midnight. Don't do it yet, I cautioned. Wait until the party. Let him walk in thinking he's rich. Let him walk in thinking he's won. Linda walked over to a desk and pulled out a checkbook. You said your mother stole your savings? She asked. 60,000, I said. And 20,000 from the vacation fund. Linda wrote a check. She ripped it out and handed it to me. I looked at it. $100,000. I can't take this, I said, shocked. Take it, Linda commanded. Consider it a retainer for your services. You're not just saving your father, you're helping me take out the trash. Use it to pay for lawyers. Use it to fix whatever mess they leave behind. Just promise me one thing. Anything, I said. When you destroy them, Linda said, her eyes flashing, make sure Curtis cries. I want to see him beg. I promise, I said, tucking the check into my pocket. I left the Vance estate with a new ally and a war chest. The pieces were falling into place. I had the money. I had the motive. I had the method. But there was one more loose end. Bradley. The lawyer. If I took down Mom and Curtis, Bradley would try to salvage the house for Courtney. I needed to neutralize him too. And for that, I needed to find someone who hated Courtney as much as I did. I sat in my truck, the engine idling, staring at the contact list on my phone. I was looking for a name I hadn't dialed in 5 years. Sarah Jenkins. Sarah had been Courtney's best friend in high school and college. They were inseparable. The blonde duo. But 3 years ago, Sarah vanished from Courtney's social media. No explanation. Just gone. I knew why. Or at least, I knew the rumor. Courtney had slept with Sarah's fiancé a week before the wedding. The wedding was called off. Sarah moved away. If anyone had dirt on Courtney, and by extension, her husband Bradley, it was Sarah. I found her current employer on LinkedIn. She was working as a paralegal at a mid-sized firm in the next town over. I drove there the next morning. I waited in the lobby until she came out for lunch. "Sarah?" I called out. She turned. She looked different. Harder. Less makeup, sharper clothes. When she saw me, her face tightened. "Meredith," she said, clutching her purse. "If you're here to deliver an invitation to another one of Courtney's look-at-me parties, save it. I'd rather drink bleach." "I'm not here for Courtney," I said, walking up to her. "I'm here to burn her down. And I heard you might have the matches." Sarah stopped. She looked at me, really looked at me, and saw the lack of sisterly love in my eyes. "Buy me a coffee," she said. We sat in a corner booth at a diner. I told her everything. The renovation scam. The stolen inheritance. Mom's affair. Sarah listened, sipping her black coffee, a small, cruel smile playing on her lips. "Classic Courtney," she said. "She always needs someone else to pay for her life. And Bradley, God, that slimeball." "You know Bradley?" I asked. "Know him?" Sarah laughed. "I used to work with him. Before he started his own boutique practice." "Why do you think he left the big firm?" "He didn't resign. He was pushed out." My ears perked up. "Why?" "Billing fraud," Sarah said, lowering her voice. "He was padding hours. Charging clients for work he didn't do. But the firm hushed it up to avoid a scandal. They let him resign quietly." "That's good," I said. "But it's hearsay. I need something current. Something that proves he's dirty now." Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. "You said he drafted a lien waiver for you to sign?" she asked. "Yes. He called it a project completion acceptance. Does he have power of attorney for your father?" "No," I said. "Dad handles his own affairs. Or he thinks he does." "Well," Sarah said, swiping through her photos. "Bradley has been bragging to our old mutual friends about a big payout coming after Christmas. He sent this to a group chat." She turned the phone to me. It was a screenshot of a document. It was a power of attorney form, granting Deborah full control over Gregory's assets. And at the bottom, there was a signature. Gregory Miller. "Dad didn't sign this," I said, my blood running cold. "Dad would never sign away his autonomy. He's paranoid about that." "Zoom in," Sarah said. I zoomed in. The signature was shaky, but the pen pressure was even. Too even. "That's a digital stamp," Sarah said. "Bradley lifted your dad's signature from a tax return, digitized it, and stamped it on this document. It's forgery. And since he notarized it himself, that's a felony. That's automatic disbarment. Can you send me this?" I asked. "Already did," Sarah said. "And Meredith?" "Yeah. When you take them down, make sure Courtney loses the house. That's all she cares about. Status. Strip her of that, and she's nothing." "Consider it done," I said. I left the diner feeling like I was carrying a loaded weapon. I had the nuclear codes for every single one of them. Mom, adultery, embezzlement. Curtis, fraud, romance scam. Bradley, forgery, legal malpractice. Courtney, conspiracy, solicitation of fraud. I drove home. The sun was setting on December 23rd. Tomorrow was the party. When I walked into the house, Mom was in the living room, fluffing pillows. "Oh, Meredith," she said, not looking up. "Did you pick up the dry cleaning?" Courtney's dress was in there. "Yes, Mom," I said. "It's in the hall." "Good. And make sure you wear something appropriate tomorrow. Try to look like you belong in this family for once." I stopped at the bottom of the stairs. I looked at her back, at her perfectly coiffed hair, at the woman who had birthed me and then hated me for breathing. "Don't worry, Mom," I said softly. "I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who I am tomorrow." She didn't even turn around. "That's nice, dear. Just don't burn the roast." I went up to my room. I locked the door. I pulled out my laptop and started building the presentation. Slide 1, the investment. Slide 2, the betrayal. Slide 3, the end. I worked through the night. I synced the audio clips. I redacted the naughty bits of the texts but left the dates visible. I scanned the forged documents. I was no longer a contractor building a house. I was a prosecutor building a case. And tomorrow, court was in session. The morning of December 24th dawned gray and heavy with the threat of snow. It was fitting. I woke up at 6 a.m., but I hadn't really slept. I had spent the last hour lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing my lines. My stomach was a knot of anxiety and anticipation. This was it. The day everything changed. I went downstairs. The house was quiet. I made coffee, strong and black. I had one final move to make to ensure the trap was sprung perfectly. I opened my laptop and logged into a burner email account I had created the night before. I had spoofed the sender name to look like it came from Mom's secret email address, the one she used for Curtis. To vman1960@gmail.com. Subject: change of plans, come tonight. My love. I can't wait until the 26th. I want you here tonight. Gregory knows. We had a huge fight last night, and I told him everything. He's defeated. He's agreed to a quiet divorce if we just let him keep his dignity for one last dinner. Come to the party at 8 p.m. We will announce our new life together to the family. Courtney is thrilled. It will be our grand entrance. Please come. Save me from this boring life a day early. Love. D. I hit send. It was a gamble. If Curtis called her to check, the gig was up. But I knew from the recordings that Mom was terrified of calling him when Dad was home. She relied on texts and emails. And Curtis? He was greedy. The thought of grand entrance and asserting his dominance over Dad would be too tempting for his ego. Plus, he probably wanted to ensure the money was secure. Now, for the second part of the trap. I went to the dining room. I set the table with the finest china, the Royal Doulton set Mom only used for important people. I polished the silver until it gleamed like weaponry. Then, I set up the technology. I placed a small, innocuous-looking projector on the sidebar, pointing it at the large blank wall opposite the dining table. I covered it with a festive garland of holly so only the lens peeked out. I ran the HDMI cable under the rug to my seat at the head of the table. Usually, Dad sat at the head. But tonight, I would claim that spot. Mom walked in around 9 a.m., looking flushed and manic. "Meredith! Why is the projector out?" she snapped, spotting the cable. "Oh," I said, putting on my best eager daughter face. I made a slideshow. You know, for Courtney's birthday. Photos of her growing up. Cute baby pictures. I thought it would be a nice surprise. Mom's face softened. Her vanity was her weakness. Oh. That's actually thoughtful of you. Make sure you include the ones from her pageant win in 2010. She looked stunning in that blue dress. Don't worry, I said. I included everything important. Good, she said, distracted. She checked her phone. I need to go to the salon. Make sure the caterers know to use the side door. I don't want them tracking Snow in. I thought I was cooking. I asked. You are cooking the main course, she said dismissively. But I ordered appetizers from Chez Pierre. We can't rely on your rustic cooking for everything. She breezed out, trailing expensive perfume. I checked my phone. A text from Sarah. I sent the file to the Bar Association an hour ago. They confirmed receipt. Bradley is going to have a very bad week after Christmas. A text from Linda. The accounts are frozen. The credit cards are dead. He tried to buy gas an hour ago and was declined. He's furious. He's coming to your house tonight. He thinks he can get cash from your mother. Perfect. The rat was cornered, and he was running toward the cheese. I went to the basement to check on Dad. He was sitting in his small room, reading under a single lamp. He looked frail. Hey, Dad, I said, leaning against the doorframe. He looked up and smiled. It was a sad, tired smile. Merry Christmas, Meredith. Dad, I said, stepping into the room. I need you to be strong tonight. Strong? He laughed weakly. I'm an old man, Meredith. I'm just trying to stay out of the way. No, I said fiercely. You are the man who built this family. You are the one who read to me when I was sick. You are the one who taught me integrity. Tonight, I'm going to give you a gift. But it's going to be hard to open. He looked confused. What do you mean? Just trust me. When things get crazy tonight, and they will, just trust me. Don't sign anything. And don't leave the table. He studied my face. For the first time in years, the fog in his eyes seemed to clear. He saw the steel in my spine. You look like my mother, he said softly. Edith. She was a tough woman. She didn't take prisoners. Neither do I, Dad, I said. Neither do I. I went back upstairs. It was time to get dressed. I didn't put on a holiday dress. I didn't put on a sweater. I put on my closing suit. It was a tailored black blazer, crisp white shirt, and sharp trousers. It was the outfit I wore when I was negotiating million-dollar contracts. It was armor. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun. I applied red lipstick, wore paint. I looked in the mirror. The girl who hung lights and begged for approval was gone. The woman staring back was a CEO about to fire her entire board of directors. It was 5 p.m. The doorbell rang. The guests were arriving. The show was about to begin. The doorbell rang again, sharper this time. I walked to the foyer, my heels clicking rhythmically on the hardwood I had laid. Click. Clack. Click. Clack. The sound of a countdown. I opened the door. Courtney and Bradley stood there, framed by the falling snow. They looked like a magazine ad for a successful, insufferable couple. Courtney was wearing a white fur coat, faux, I hoped, but doubted, and Bradley was in a velvet dinner jacket. Finally, Courtney sighed, brushing past me without a hello. It's freezing out here. Why didn't you turn the porch heater on? Merry Christmas to you too, Courtney, I said, closing the door. Happy birthday to me, she corrected, tossing her coat at me. Hang this up. Carefully. It sheds. I caught the coat. I wanted to throw it into the snow, but I hung it up. Patience. Bradley lingered, looking me up and down. Nice suit, Meredith. Going to a funeral? Something like that, I said, holding his gaze until he blinked and looked away. They moved into the living room, where Mom was already holding court with a glass of champagne. Dad was sitting in the corner armchair, nursing a scotch, looking like a guest in his own home. Look at this place. Courtney squealed, twirling in the center of the room. It's finally acceptable. The new floors really open up the space. I'm thinking of painting this wall navy blue, though. What do you think, Brad? Navy would be bold, Bradley agreed, walking around and tapping the walls. Very regal. They were already redecorating. They hadn't even signed the deed, and they were painting over my work. I went to the kitchen to plate the appetizers. My hands were steady now. The anxiety had been replaced by a cold, clinical focus. I checked the tablet connected to the projector. System ready. I checked the audio file on my phone. Volume up. I checked the folder of documents under my chair. Organized. I walked out with the tray of Chez Pierre canapés. So, Bradley said, popping a tart into his mouth. Big night. We have some business to discuss later, right, Deborah? Yes, Mom said, her eyes darting to the clock. It was 6:30 p.m. She was nervous. She checked her phone. No doubt wondering why Curtis hadn't texted back. He wouldn't. I had intercepted the reply and deleted it from her phone while she was in the shower. A risk, but a necessary one. Let's eat first, Mom said. We can do the paperwork over dessert. Sounds like a plan, Courtney said. I want my present first, though. The house is the present, sweetheart, Mom said, winking. I felt a surge of nausea. They were so blatant. Actually, I said, stepping forward. I have a present for everyone. A special presentation. Courtney rolled her eyes. Oh God. Is it a slideshow of me? Mom said you were making one. Please tell me you didn't use the braceface photos. It's a retrospective, I said. Of our family history. How quaint, Bradley sneered. We moved to the dining table. Mom sat at the right. Dad at the left. Courtney and Bradley across from me. I sat at the head of the table. Meredith, Mom said, frowning. That's Daddy's seat. Dad doesn't mind, I said. Do you, Dad? Dad looked at me. He saw the fire in my eyes. No, he said quietly. Let her sit there. Mom huffed but didn't argue. She was too focused on her phone under the table. I poured the wine. The expensive 2012 Cabernet. To family, Bradley toasted, raising his glass. And to new beginnings. To the truth, I said, clinking my glass against his hard enough to make a ringing sound. We ate. The prime rib was delicious. The conversation was excruciating. They talked about Courtney's upcoming trip to Aspen. They talked about Bradley's new Jaguar. They talked about how relieved Mom would be to downsize next year, the lie they told Dad. Dad barely spoke. He just ate mechanically. So, Meredith, Courtney said, picking at her meat. What are you going to do after, the renovation is officially done? Do you have another project? Or are you going to take a break? I'm thinking of expanding, I said. Into demolition. Demolition? Courtney laughed. Sounds messy. It is, I said. But sometimes, you have to tear everything down to get rid of the rot. The room went quiet. The air grew heavy. Okay, Mom said, sensing the tension. Let's do the paperwork now. Bradley? Bradley wiped his mouth and pulled a sleek leather folder from his bag. Right, he said, sliding a document toward me. Meredith, this is just a standard completion form. It acknowledges that the renovation is finished to code and that you've been compensated for your efforts. Compensated? I asked, picking up the pen. I haven't been paid a dime. Well, the experience, Bradley smirked. And living here rent-free during the work. I didn't live here. I had my own apartment. I just stayed here during late nights. Just sign it, Meredith, Courtney snapped. Stop being dramatic. I'll sign it, I said, putting the pen down. But first, the slideshow. I tapped the tablet. The big screen on the wall flickered to life. Oh, look, Courtney said, clapping. Is that me? Not yet, I said. The first slide appeared. It wasn't a photo of Courtney. It was a spreadsheet. Grand total, $57,450. What is this? Mom asked, squinting. This is the cost of the renovation, I said calmly. Every nail. Every board. Every hour of labor. Boring, Courtney sang out. Next slide. As you wish, I said. I swiped. The room filled with the sound of a recording. I'm pretending to be a little contractor. She'll just die alone and lonely. Courtney's voice boomed through the speakers. Courtney froze. Her fork hovered halfway to her mouth. Mom should make her pay for the renovation and then cut her off. Mom went pale. I looked around the table. The masks were slipping. Act 1, I whispered to myself. Let's begin. The silence that followed the audio clip was absolute. It wasn't the silence of peace, it was the silence of a vacuum, sucking the air out of the room. Courtney was the first to react. Her face turned a blotchy, ugly red. What the hell is this? She screeched. Did you record me? Yes, I said calmly. That's illegal. Bradley shouted, slamming his hand on the table. You can't do that. That's a violation of privacy. Actually, I said, I'm not using it in a court of law, Bradley. I'm using it at a dinner party. And I think the court of public opinion, namely, Dad, might find it interesting. I turned to Dad. He was staring at the table, his hand gripping his glass so hard I thought it might shatter. Is that true, Martha? Dad asked, using Mom's legal name. His voice was low, trembling. You're planning to cut her off? It's taken out of context. Mom stammered, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. We were just joking. You know Courtney's sense of humor. Joking about stealing $60,000? I asked. Let's see the next slide. I tapped the screen. Slide 3, the conspiracy. I projected the email from Bradley to Mom. The one titled Asset Transfer Strategy. I highlighted the paragraph about the unjust enrichment loophole. Read it, Bradley, I said. Read it out loud. Bradley sat back, crossing his arms. I'm not reading anything. This is privileged attorney-client communication. You hacked her computer. That's a felony. So is conspiracy to commit fraud, I countered. And so is advising a client to defraud a family member. I turned to Sarah's evidence. Slide 4, the forgery. The screen showed the power of attorney document with Dad's signature. Next to it, the tax return signature Bradley had lifted. Dad, I said gently. Did you sign a power of attorney giving Mom full control of your assets last week? Dad looked up at the screen. He squinted at the document. No. I never signed that. That's what I thought, I said. Bradley forged it. He used a digital stamp. Bradley stood up, knocking his chair back. This is insane. I'm leaving. Courtney, get your coat. Sit down, I barked. My voice cracked like a whip. I have already sent this document to the State Bar Association. And to the partners at your old firm. You know, the ones who fired you for billing fraud? Bradley's face drained of color. He collapsed back into his chair. How did you know? He whispered. I have friends too, Bradley, I said. Courtney started crying. Not sad tears. Angry, bratty tears. You're ruining my birthday. You're ruining everything. Why do you have to be such a bitch? I'm not done, I said. That was just the appetizer. Now for the main course. I looked at Mom. She was shaking. She knew what was coming. Meredith, please, she whispered. Don't. Not in front of your father. You didn't care about Dad when you drained the vacation fund, I said. Slide 5, the theft. The bank statements appeared. The $20,000 transfer. The refinancing documents showing $200,000 withdrawn. Dad stood up slowly. He looked at the screen, then at Mom. Martha, he said, his voice sounding broken. The house? You refinanced the house? We worked 30 years to pay that off. I had to. Mom cried, tears streaming down her face, fake tears, strategic tears. We needed money. For investments. To secure our retirement. Investment? I asked. Let's see the investment. Slide 6, the affair. I put up the photo of Curtis and Mom. Then the text messages. I can't wait to leave Gregory. He's suffocating. Just a few more days. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the projector fan. Dad stared at the screen. He stared at the face of his best friend. Curtis? Dad whispered. You and Curtis? Mom didn't answer. She just put her head in her hands. How long? Dad roared. It was a sound I had never heard from him. A primal, wounded animal sound. How long? 10 years, I answered for her. Off and on. But the plan to leave you? That started 6 months ago. She was going to serve you divorce papers on December 26th. She was going to leave you with the debt, take the cash, and fly to Italy with him. Dad looked at Mom. The look of love, of 40 years of marriage, vanished from his eyes. In its place was pure, unadulterated disgust. You monster, Dad spat. It's not what you think. Mom shrieked. He understands me. You never understood me. You're boring, Gregory. You're old and you're boring and I deserve to be happy. So you stole my daughter's money? Dad yelled. You stole our home? It's my house too. Mom yelled back. And now, I interrupted, checking my watch. It was 7:59 p.m. For the final surprise. I stood up and walked to the front door. Mom, I said. You wanted a new life? You wanted Curtis? Well, I got him for you. I flung the front door open. Standing on the porch, brushing snow off his cashmere coat, was Curtis Vance. He held a bouquet of red roses. He looked confused, blinking in the sudden light, but he smoothed his silver hair and stepped in, wearing a confident smirk. Deborah, he called out. The door was unlocked. I got your email. Surprise! He walked into the dining room. He stopped. He saw the projector screen. He saw the text message, I love you V. Just a few more days. Displayed in 100-point font. He saw Dad, red-faced and trembling. He saw Mom, pale as a sheet. What the? Curtis started, his smirk dropping. Hello, Curtis, I said, closing the door behind him. Welcome to the party. Gregory, Curtis stammered, stepping back. I can explain. This is. Deborah sent me an email. She didn't, I said. I did. You? Curtis looked at me with disdain. The carpenter daughter? The daughter you helped rob, I corrected. Dad walked around the table. He moved slowly, deliberately. Curtis, Dad said. You were the best man at my wedding. Greg, listen, Curtis said, raising his hands. It's not what it looks like. Deborah, she came on to me. She was lonely. I was just trying to comfort her. You liar! Mom screamed, jumping up. You said you loved me. You said we were going to Italy. Italy? Curtis laughed nervously. I never said that. You're crazy, Martha. I have the emails, Curtis, I said. And I have the bank transfers. $200,000 from my mother to Vance Holdings LLC. Curtis's eyes darted to the door. I'm leaving. Not yet, I said. There's one more guest. I opened the door again. Linda Vance walked in. She wasn't wearing a coat. She was wearing a fur stole and diamonds. She looked like a queen coming to an execution. Hello, Curtis, Linda said. Her voice was ice. Curtis turned white. Whiter than the snow outside. Linda? What are you doing here? I'm here to pick up your credit cards, Linda said calmly. And your car keys. Since you paid for the gas with my money. Linda, baby, please, Curtis pleaded, sweating now. These people, they're crazy. They're trying to frame me. Shut up, Linda said. She walked over to Mom. Mom shrank back. Linda slapped her. It was a sharp, cracking sound that echoed through the room. Courtney gasped. That, Linda said, is for sleeping with my husband. Then she turned to Curtis. And you? You're broke, Curtis. Did you tell her? Did you tell her that Vance Holdings is empty? That I froze the accounts this afternoon? Mom looked at Curtis. What? He's broke, Mom, I said. He was using your stolen money to pay off his gambling debts. There is no villa in Italy. There is no new life. He was going to drain you dry and dump you. Mom looked at Curtis with horror. Is that true? Curtis shrugged, his facade crumbling. You were an easy mark, Deborah. You were so desperate to be young again. Dad roared. He didn't yell this time. He lunged. Gregory Miller, the pacifist professor, balled his fist and punched Curtis Vance square in the jaw. Curtis went down like a sack of potatoes, crashing into the china cabinet. Plates shattered. Crystal broke. Get out! Dad screamed. Get out of my house! Curtis scrambled up, holding his jaw, bleeding. I'm suing you. I'm suing all of you. Go ahead, Linda said. My lawyers will bury you so deep you'll need a snorkel to breathe. Curtis looked at Linda, then at Dad, then at the door. He ran. He ran out into the snow without his roses. Linda looked at me and nodded. Thank you, Meredith. I'll handle him from here. She turned to Dad. Gregory, I am so sorry. Dad nodded, unable to speak. Linda walked out, leaving the door open to the cold wind. The wind blew snow into the hallway, but no one moved to close the door. The dining room was a ruin. Broken glass, spilled wine, shattered illusions. I looked at the people left. Courtney was sobbing into her napkin. Bradley was staring at his phone, likely realizing his career was over. Mom was slumped in her chair, staring at the empty space where Curtis had stood. "It's over," I said. I walked to the table and picked up the completion acceptance document Bradley had tried to make me sign. I ripped it in half. Then I ripped it again. I let the confetti pieces fall onto Courtney's plate. "Happy birthday, Courtney," I said. "You bitch," Courtney whispered. "You destroyed our family." "No," I said. "I fumigated it." I turned to Mom. "Meredith," she said, looking up with tear-filled eyes. I didn't know he was using me. I thought he loved me." "Does that matter?" I asked. "You were still going to steal from me. You were still going to leave Dad destitute. You're not crying because you're sorry. You're crying because you got caught and you got played." "But the money," Mom stammered. "The $200,000. Is it gone?" "Linda froze the account," I said. "We might get some of it back. But knowing Curtis, he probably spent a chunk of it already." "What am I going to do?" Mom whispered. Dad spoke up. He had calmed down, but his face was set in stone. "You are going to leave," Dad said. "Gregory?" Mom asked. "But this is my house." "Not anymore," Dad said. "You committed fraud. You forged my signature. Meredith has the proof. If you don't leave tonight, I will let her call the police." Mom looked at me. I held up my phone. 911 is already dialed, Mom. I just have to hit call. "You wouldn't send your mother to jail," she challenged. "Try me," I said. "After what I heard you say on the patio? After that loser? Try me." She saw the look in my eyes. She realized, finally, that she had no power over me anymore. She stood up slowly. "Fine. I'll go to a hotel." "With what money?" I asked. "I canceled the joint credit cards this morning." Her jaw dropped. You can't." "I'm a joint holder," I shrugged. "I reported them lost." "Courtney?" Mom asked, turning to her golden child. "Can I stay with you?" Courtney looked at Bradley. Bradley shook his head violently. "No way. We're going to have enough legal trouble without harboring a fraudster." "Sorry, Mom," Courtney said, wiping her eyes. "Our apartment is small." The betrayal came full circle. The golden child rejected the mother who created her. "Get out," Dad said again. Mom grabbed her purse. She grabbed her coat. She looked at us one last time, trying to summon some dignity. "You'll all regret this. I held this family together. You ate this family alive," I said. She walked out into the snow. She didn't have a car, Dad had the keys. She started walking down the driveway in her heels. Bradley and Courtney stood up. "We're leaving too," Bradley said. We'll be in touch." "You'll be hearing from the Bar Association," I said. "And Courtney?" "I'm putting a lien on this house for the renovation costs. If Dad sells it, I get paid first. There will be no inheritance." Courtney screamed. A guttural, childish scream. She threw her wineglass at the wall. "I hate you," she yelled. "I wish you were never born." "Feeling is mutual," I said. "Drive safe." They left. When the door finally clicked shut, the silence in the house was heavy. It was just me and Dad. The adrenaline that had sustained me for 48 hours suddenly evaporated. I felt my knees buckle. I sat down heavily in the chair Mom had vacated. Dad was still standing by the window, watching the taillights of Bradley's car disappear. "Dad?" I whispered. He turned. He looked aged. 10 years older than he looked this morning. He walked over to me. He looked at the mess on the table. He looked at the projector screen, which was now just a blue light. "You knew," he said. "How long did you know?" "A few days," I said. "I found out when I was hanging the lights." "And you did all this?" He gestured to the screen. "You investigated them?" "I had to," I said. "They were going to take everything, Dad. They were going to leave you with nothing." He pulled out a chair and sat next to me. He took my hand. His hand was rough, warm. "I'm sorry," he said. "Sorry?" I blinked. "Dad, you didn't do anything." "That's exactly it," he said, tears finally spilling over his cheeks. "I didn't do anything. For years. I saw how she treated you. I saw the favoritism. I saw the way she looked at you. And I did nothing. I hid in my books. I hid in the basement. I let you take the abuse because I was too of a coward to fight her." "Dad, no." "Yes," he insisted. "You had to fight my battle for me tonight, Meredith. You protected me when I should have been protecting you. I am so ashamed." I squeezed his hand. "We're okay, Dad. We saved the house. Well, most of the equity is gone, but we have the house." "To hell with the house," Dad said. "I have my daughter. The only one who matters." We sat there for a long time. The prime rib was cold. The candles had burned down. "What do we do now?" Dad asked. "Well," I said, a small smile touching my lips. "We have a lot of food. And nobody to eat it." Dad laughed. It was a watery, weak laugh, but it was real. "I think there's a bottle of whiskey in my study. The good stuff. I hid it from Deborah." "Go get it," I said. We spent Christmas Eve sitting on the floor of the living room, amidst the wreckage of the party, drinking whiskey and eating cold beef with our fingers. We didn't talk about Mom. We didn't talk about Courtney. We talked about construction. We talked about economics. We talked about the future. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the contractor fixing the house. I was the daughter sitting with her father. And it was the best Christmas present I ever got. If you are listening to this and you've ever had to stand up for yourself against your own family, please, like this video. It's a hard thing to do, but sometimes, it's the only way to survive. Comment "I'm a survivor" below if you've been there. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal meetings and logistics. The fallout was swift and brutal. Linda Vance was true to her word. She sued Curtis for divorce on the grounds of adultery and misuse of marital funds. She left him with nothing. He was currently living in a motel on the highway, trying to dodge process servers. Bradley was fired. The screenshot Sarah sent me was the smoking gun. His firm didn't want the bad press of a forgery scandal, so they let him go for personal reasons, but the Bar Association investigation was ongoing. He was facing disbarment. Courtney, realizing her meal ticket was cancelled, had moved into a friend's studio apartment. She tried to call me a dozen times, alternating between screaming threats and weeping apologies. I blocked her number. Mom was the hardest part. She was staying at a budget hotel. She sent letters to the house because I blocked her phone and email. "Gregory, please. I made a mistake. I was confused. Let me come home. I can't live like this." Dad read one, then threw it in the fireplace. She's not sorry she did it, Dad said, watching the paper burn. She's sorry the check bounced. We filed for divorce on January 2nd. With the evidence of infidelity and financial fraud I had gathered, Dad got everything. The house, what was left of the equity, his pension, the car. The judge was not sympathetic to a woman who stole $200,000 from her husband to run away with his best friend. We also filed a civil suit against Curtis and Vance Holdings to recover the stolen funds. Linda helped us. She released the frozen funds back to us before she finalized her own divorce. We recovered about $150,000. Mom and Curtis had blown $50,000 in 2 weeks on deposits for the villa and gifts, but it was better than nothing. I got my $60,000 back. Dad insisted on it. It's your money, Meredith, he said. You earned it. But the biggest change wasn't financial. It was the house. Dad looked around the empty, renovated living room one day in mid-January. It's too big, he said. And it has too many ghosts. What do you want to do? I asked. Sell it, he said. Let's sell it. The market is good. The renovations you did, they'll fetch a high price. And go where? I've always wanted to live near the lake, he said. A small cottage. Somewhere quiet. With a big porch for reading. I can build you a porch, I smiled. I know you can, he said. So we put the house on the market. It sold in 3 days. The project that was supposed to fund Mom's escape ended up funding Dad's freedom. 3 months later, I stood on the deck of my new condo. It was a sleek, modern place downtown, far away from the suburbs. The wind off the lake was cool, but it felt fresh, not biting. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. Saw Bradley working at the car rental place at the airport. He tried to hide when he saw me. Karma is a bitch. I smiled and texted back, love it. I was different now. The heavy weight I had carried for years, the need to please, the desperation for approval, was gone. I walked taller. My crews noticed it. I negotiated harder. My business was booming. I drove out to the lake to see Dad. He had bought a charming little cottage. It needed work, of course. The roof was old and the kitchen was dated. But this time, it was different. I pulled up in my truck. Dad was on the porch, waiting. He wasn't hiding in a basement. He was sitting in the sun. Hey, he waved. I made lemonade. We sat on the porch steps. I was thinking, Dad said, pointing to the kitchen window. Maybe we knock that wall down? Open it up? I can draw up some plans, I said. But Dad? No Italian marble. He laughed. Deal. Formica is fine by me. We worked on the cottage together. Not me working for him, but with him. He handed me tools. He held the ladder. We talked. We got to know each other again, without the filter of Mom's manipulation. I learned that Dad had wanted to be an architect, not an economist, but his father had pushed him into academia. That's why he loved watching me build. I was living his dream. I'm proud of you, Meredith, he told me one day, as we were painting the living room a soft sage green. Not because you're successful, but because you're strong. You broke the cycle. That meant more to me than any inheritance. One evening, I was sitting in my office, looking at the blueprints for a new commercial center I had bid on. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up. Meredith? It was Mom. Her voice sounded thin, raspy. Hello, Deborah, I said. I couldn't call her Mom anymore. I heard you sold the house, she said. I heard it went for over $1 million. It did, I said. That's wonderful, she said, a hint of her old greed creeping in. You know, I'm really struggling, Meredith. The hotel, it's awful. And my back hurts. I can't afford my medication. I stared at the blueprint in front of me. Strong lines. Solid foundation. No cracks. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. Is that all? She demanded, her voice rising. I'm your mother. You owe me. I gave you life. You gave me life, I agreed. And then you tried to sell it to the highest bidder. Meredith, please. Just a few thousand. Until I get on my feet. No, I said. You're cruel, she spat. You're just like your grandmother. Thank you, I said. I hung up. And then I blocked the number. I sat there in the silence, waiting for the guilt to come. Waiting for that old familiar feeling of being the bad daughter. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt peace. I picked up my pencil and went back to work. I had a building to design. I had a life to build. And this time, I was building it on my own terms, with my own money, for the people who actually loved me. The renovation was complete. And the view was spectacular. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to live through, and it wasn't easy to tell. But I hope it reminds you that you don't have to accept toxic love just because it comes from family. You are worth more than your utility. You are worth more than your bank account. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. And remember, the best revenge isn't anger. It's living a happy, successful life that they can't touch. Stay strong, everyone. Goodbye for now. Melissa's journey reminds us that sometimes the most profound act of self-love is walking away. In a world where family ties are often considered sacred and unbreakable, her story challenges us to examine the difference between biological connections and genuine relationships. The most valuable lesson here isn't about revenge or justice, it's about recognizing our own worth when others refuse to see it. Like a phoenix rising from ashes, Melissa transformed her pain into power, not by becoming cruel like those who hurt her, but by finally enforcing boundaries that should have existed all along. The invisible chains of emotional manipulation can be stronger than any physical restraint. Many of us carry these unseen burdens, the constant need for validation, the endless giving without receiving, the desperate hope that this time will be different. Melissa's revelation wasn't just financial independence, it was the understanding that she deserved respect regardless of what she could provide. This realization is available to anyone caught in toxic relationships, whether familial or otherwise. True freedom comes not from changing others, but from changing how we allow ourselves to be treated. As we close this chapter of Melissa's life, consider your own relationships. Are there people in your life who value what you provide more than who you are? Remember that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for genuine connection. Sometimes the family we choose brings more healing than the family we're born into. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to make the difficult choice between peace and painful attachment, comment good below. Your journey matters, and you are never alone in it.